Starfield. It's one of the most anticipated games from Xbox and quite possibly one of the most hyped and expectation overloaded games this generation. Nearly everything we know about Starfield has been communicated by Bethesda over the past 2 years, but now the game is here. It is launched and everyone wants to know if Starfield is worth the wait. Bethesda's latest RPG, a sci-fi massive epic adventure, is finally here, and after nearly 100 hours of playing, we're going to break down the graphics, gameplay, story, and without any spoilers, the replayability of the Xbox exclusive Starfield. Presentation. Bethesda's creation engine has never been known for being able to render the best looking games, but the creativity and flexibility of their RPGs in this game engine are unmatched. There are no excuses, and Starfield, with the updated Creation Engine 2.0, is absolutely gorgeous. Even on Xbox Series consoles where the game has been capped at 30 FPS, the visual presentation and frame rate are surprisingly well done. The game uses a modified global illumination lighting that makes a realistic system of interiors and exteriors, even expanding light throughout the galaxy to the planet you're exploring. The soft shadows and transitioning lights in interiors and inside ships and even on your character and materials look incredible. The game is sharp and highly detailed, even sometimes competing with the highly detailed worlds in big budget games, and well decorated and messy interiors and attention to detail on the littlest of items, which are completely interactive and movable in the world. The characters' facial expressions and lip syncing, which are done procedurally by a program, are incredibly accurate. And just listening to the characters speak and watching their facial expressions, wrinkled eyebrows and foreheads, squinting eyes, and different emotions show you something you would never expect in a Bethesda game, and the character models look really great under the correct lighting. The scale of your ships and the planets you land on are massive and lend to a gigantic weight and sense of scale that really makes you feel like you stepped onto an unknown planet. But Starfield suffers from a very poor implementation of HDR, and I recommend you shut it off in your system on your Xbox console, or if you're on PC, to play the game in SDR mode, as it will clear up the heavy midtones. Also, the Bethesda engine does not allow you to change contrast or brightness whatsoever in the game settings. But even still, launching the game as it is, with HDR or not, it is the best looking Bethesda game ever made, and in terms of visual graphics and presentation, it even rivals some of the biggest AAA games, especially when you look at the sense of scope, where you can go to hundreds of planets in your normal playthrough to see cultivated content and locations. Gameplay. Bethesda RPGs have always been some of the biggest, most immersive and customizable open world games. Starfield is much different than Elder Scrolls or Fallout in space. There are expectations that things you did in Fallout or Skyrim may be available in sci-fi form here, but Starfield is actually a game that stands on its own merits. And that can be a good or bad thing depending on what features you normally love in Bethesda games. First of all, the control of your character is really well done, and you feel a sense of speed in the movement of your character's head, and the movement on foot is very smooth and swift. The gunplay is really close to being in the ranks of a really great first-person shooter. It has a little bit of an awkward auto-aim that is very minimal, and shooting in third person gives you a strange angle from your character, the reticle, that doesn't seem to line up where you think it would when you're playing in third person. But after a bit of time, you can come attuned to the great third-person combat. And the combat in first person is wholly satisfying, as the aim down sights, reload animations, and close proximity to great looking detailed weaponry makes playing Starfield a first person shooter well worth your time. There is a wide variety of guns and weapons, so many that you may not see or own them in one playthrough. Shotguns, snipers, and micro SMG pistols are major highlights in Starfield, as they have a really great feeling for reloading and aim and recoil with perfect satisfaction. Your enemies react to the ballistics with stumbling and impact reactions on the body, and when you get into low gravity or zero gravity combat, you'll see enemies barrel roll and cycle across the room and bounce off of obstacles. One part of the combat that does not seem to satisfy is the alien creatures and critters that you will come across in your exploration on planets. Some of these creatures are underwhelming or just look like enlarged insects that either mostly ignore you due to their differing temperaments, which are called out by the scanner in the game, or they just charge at you, forcing you to backpedal and reload in a panic. Shooting these bugs that should have been left alone until you decide to invade their planet seems like the wrong choice in this type of game, and I find that shooting the alien creatures is not as fun as I hoped it would be. But of course, it is Starfield, and not all of your combat is going to happen on foot. And that's when you take to the skies, and there are a ton of great space fighting shooter games out there, and I would have to say Starfield does a very good job of mixing what we loved in Star Wars Battlefront and games like Everspace or No Man's Sky's aerial space fighting. The game even uses a VAT-style targeting system that allows you to zoom in and take out certain parts of a ship. But the best part is pulling the brakes and turning sharp corners and using your engine thrusters to get behind an enemy ship and explode it into the stratosphere. Of course, if you're careful and patient, you can take out the engines of a ship, whittle down its shields, and get close and dock, taking out the crew on foot inside their own ship, steal it, and make it your own. Another part of the gameplay that is really important that some may not be able to tell just from looking at combat footage is the power of conversation and persuasion. A large chunk of the gameplay in Starfield involves you talking to people throughout the universe and bending them to your will with persuasion. Almost each and every character, even NPCs that you'll run into in a store or an alleyway, are very well voiced, and their performance really lends to a sense of realism with really great snappy writing and keeping you trained on every word they say, as it paints a picture of the world they live in and where they're going to send you on their behalf for a quest. Spending points to convince them to do things your way really brings in a roll of the dice style minigame that makes learning what they have to say in conversation its own part of combat as you build your character. Story. There will be no spoilers here, and as much of the excitement that you experience in Starfield comes from the very beginning of the game to find out why you're here and where you're going. In fact, well over half of the main story is being held in secrecy for your benefit, as it makes the campaign so much more enjoyable. There are even bigger things that I won't even explain in this review. Know that the world is made up of a gigantic universe that is connected by multiple factions, good or bad, that are working to expand humanity throughout the galaxies. But the story is the most important part of this game. Yes, even though you could spend hundreds of hours customizing a ship, building an outpost, or scanning flora and fauna, you're an explorer tasked with unraveling the mysteries of the universe and working with a scientific and theological group called Constellation. As you set out in the universe, you'll run into different factions and groups that send you to multiple systems and planets. The characters that you encounter will be soft-spoken or thoughtful, and some will be bloodthirsty and self-serving. This is Bethesda's greatest story told, and is a main focal point of the game that you cannot miss, and you shouldn't wait to experience. As you set out to find the anomalies that will have some type of mysterious draw, you will unfold a well-told and well-presented story with big set pieces and surprising twists and turns. None of that is being shown here, and as solely discovering it for yourself is one of the main treats of playing Starfield. Replayability. Starfield offers hundreds of hours of potential gameplay with the main quests, mixed with faction missions and exploration that is organically happening. Building your character, you'll be able to get some 30 levels through a normal playthrough, unlocking just a fraction of the skill tree available to you, meaning that you could decide to restart the game and build a new character and take a different path, so you can unlock abilities that weren't available to you from your previous choices. But the game offers a mysterious New Game Plus that you'll have to discover for yourself, and this makes the replayability of Starfield only limited by how much you enjoy enveloping yourself into this universe. Todd Howard explains that mods will eventually be available for Starfield, and there is a planned expansion for the game, but right now, the base game offers well over 50 hours for your average open world player. Some of the major downsides of Starfield that have to be called out are in the comparisons to their previous work with Fallout and Elder Scrolls. The ability to walk amongst a ginormous content-filled map from one end to the other is not the same gameplay loop you'll find in Starfield, but that's okay. Everything is segmented through loading screens to get you in and out of your ship and on and off planets throughout the galaxies, but as you get accustomed to quickly maneuvering the menus, you'll be able to jump back and forth to locations with ease and discover more locations than you have in Elder Scrolls or Fallout combined. It is puzzling, though, that the game offers a very watered down or limited version of crafting and building. There is a bit of depth, especially when you compare it to Fallout 4, Fallout 76, or Skyrim, but there are mod slots that increase your weapons and gear, but overall the satisfaction of carrying hundreds of materials and creating a wide variety of things are somewhat missing, as you cannot craft ammo or you cannot craft med packs, which are Starfield's version of stim packs. Maybe this will be expanded in the future for Starfield, but it would be great to be able to craft ammo and other things. But the base building outpost mechanic in Starfield is quite limited compared to those of us who spent hundreds of hours playing Fallout 4 or 76. Now, I know not everybody loves to build in games, but you cannot create a custom fortress wall by wall, window by window, or adding your own custom roofs, but instead, you're only able to put down preset fabrication rooms connected by hallways and doors. And many that are familiar with Fallout's building system will be comfortable with creating limited spaces, and you get to do this on 8 different locations. Also, if you choose to join nearly all of the factions in the game, be prepared to be peaceful with nearly everyone, which means you could bring yourself very limited opportunities for combat and conflict as you go out into the world, since some of these factions will already be aligned to you, so choose wisely who you decide to work with and who you'd like to gun down. Space combat can also be far too rare of an event, as many planets and systems that you jump to will just have peaceful ships floating by, or some asking you for resources or small quests. And it would be better suited to have more hostile ships surrounding most systems or planets that you can engage in combat with. Some of these downsides may not bother most players, but the game's atmosphere, attention to detail, and smooth, satisfying combat, and varied character RPG mechanics more than make up for an overall experience with an incredible story you did not expect from a Bethesda open-world RPG. Taking this all in, and you soon realize Bethesda set out to make a wholly new experience, a new IP, and a long-awaited massive space sci-fi epic that does not simply just reskin the old favorites in Fallout and Elder Scrolls. The well-crafted story, the character interaction, and the way they unfold for you with a sense of exploration, freedom on your own ship with a crew you select, gives you an organic RPG experience like no other game. And so many have been compared to this. Starfield is a game you have to play. If you are a fan of RPGs or a fan of sci-fi and the wonders of space, you have to play Starfield. The game looks and sounds and feels incredibly satisfying behind the controls of a gunship, the weapons in your hands of your outfitted space explorer. We've waited 8 years for Starfield. It's finally here, and now we can set ignitions to launch. This is Colteastwood. Thank you so much for checking out this review. This was a huge game. There was a lot of weight and a lot of responsibility on reviewing such a massive game. And I said I played about 90 or 100 hours of the game, and a ton of that content I still have not reached. I got to the point where I had to finish the main story. There is so much left to do. I think Starfield really tries to do something new and give you this real feeling of exploration and heading out there and building your character, and I absolutely love that. If you end up enjoying this review and you learn something from it, let me know by liking and subscribing to the channel. You can hit the bell to be notified of new content as it goes up, and if you want to further support the channel, you can join the channel membership by hitting that button below, or you can join the Patreon, and either of those get you entered into early access for videos or monthly merch giveaways. You have to check out my 10 tips and tricks video for Starfield that show you the best way to start the game and level up as quickly as possible and get the most enjoyment out of it as possible. So check that out. That video is going up tomorrow. But I want to know what your opinion is, and we're going to talk about it on XNC Podcast, because I'll actually be able to talk in more detail and a longer form about what I thought of the game and the experiences I've had. And there's so much to cover there. Check out XNC Podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and also right here live on the Colteastwood channel on YouTube. But yes, I want to know what your opinion is, what you think you're going to experience for the game. What score would you give it based off of what you're seeing? I would love to know. I broke it down by gameplay, graphics, story, and replayability, and I really enjoyed Starfield so much. Let me know in the comment section. You all have an opinion. I want to hear it, but just remember, be nice.